Every night at 9 p.m., a millionaire finishes his expensive dinner and hands his leftovers to a little girl waiting outside. No questions, no conversation, just food and silence. But the night he decided to follow her, what he discovered shattered everything he believed about poverty, sacrifice, and love. This is not just a story about kindness. It's a story of an 11-year-old child carrying a burden no child should ever carry. Watch till the very end, because what he finds will stay with you long after the video ends. Backhand index pointing right if stories like this touch your heart. Subscribe now. For 3 months, the routine never changed. Every night at exactly 8:15, Marcus Chin stepped into La Lumiere, a restaurant where crystal chandeliers glowed softly and silence cost more than conversation. As the CEO of one of the fastest-growing tech companies in the city, Marcus could have eaten anywhere, yet he always chose the same corner table, the same meal, the same solitude. Alone suited him. It was predictable, controlled, safe, and every night, just as dessert menus appeared, she came. The little girl couldn't have been older than 8. Thin arms, worn shoes, hair tied back with a fading ribbon. She never begged, never spoke above a whisper. She simply stood near the service door, clutching 2 oversized grocery bags that looked far too heavy for her small frame. Marcus noticed her on the first night and told himself not to. By the 3rd night, guilt won. He began leaving untouched food on his plate, perfectly packed, still warm. He'd nod to the waiter, who would quietly hand it to her once Marcus left. The girl always bowed her head politely, whispered, "Thank you," and disappeared into the night. That was it. No conversation. No questions. Marcus told himself it was kindness. A small, neat solution to a problem he didn't want examined too closely. He never asked her name. Never asked where she lived. Never asked why a child her age carried groceries at night instead of homework or toys. In his mind, she was just another sad story in a city full of them. One that ended the moment he did his part. And for a while, that was enough. Weeks passed. The routine hardened into habit. Marcus stopped feeling the tug in his chest. The act became mechanical, like signing a check or approving a budget. Efficient, clean. But sometimes, just before she vanished down the street, he noticed something unsettling. She never ate a single bite. Not once did she open the containers. Not once did she sneak a taste. She clutched the bags tighter instead, as if the food wasn't for her at all. Marcus ignored the thought, because asking questions meant responsibility, and responsibility meant stepping outside the comfort of his control world. So he convinced himself that a small act of kindness was enough. He was wrong. That night felt different from the moment Marcus sat down. The restaurant buzzed with quiet celebration, polished laughter, clinking glasses, conversations about holiday flights and bonus checks. Thanksgiving was only a day away. Families were reuniting. Tables were being set. Gratitude was being rehearsed. Yet something felt off. When his meal arrived, Marcus barely touched it. His eyes kept drifting to the service door, waiting. She appeared later than usual. The little girl moved slower tonight. Her steps uneven, the grocery bags dragging low enough to brush the pavement. They were heavier, so full they stretched the thin plastic, threatening to tear. Her coat looked too small, sleeves ending above her wrists. The wind cut sharply through the street, and she flinched as it passed. Marcus felt a strange tightness settle in his chest. When the waiter quietly handed her the food containers, she nodded as always, polite, silent. But this time, as she turned away, she stumbled, just for a second. The bag swung forward, nearly pulling her to the ground. She caught herself, breathing hard, then adjusted her grip and kept walking, head down, determined. Marcus stood up before he realized what he was doing. He grabbed his coat, left cash on the table, and stepped outside. Just to make sure she's okay, he told himself. Just for a block or two. He stayed several steps behind her, far enough not to be noticed. The city around them slowly transformed as they walked. At first, it was familiar territory, bright storefronts, holiday lights, couples sharing hot drinks. But then the lights thinned. The streets narrowed. Glass towers gave way to aging brick buildings with boarded windows and flickering street lamps. The sounds changed, too. Laughter faded. Music disappeared. Even traffic thinned, replaced by a hollow quiet broken only by distant sirens. Marcus slowed his pace, suddenly aware how out of place he looked. Tailored coat, polished shoes, the smell of expensive cologne lingering around him like a shield. The girl didn't look back once. She walked with purpose, turning corners instinctively, navigating streets Marcus had never bothered to learn despite living the city for over a decade. She crossed under an overpass where shadows swallowed the light, then continued into a neighborhood Marcus had only ever seen from a car window, with doors locked. Here, buildings leaned inward like tired men, trash collected in corners. A stray cat darted past them, vanishing into the dark. Marcus felt a prickle of unease. This is far enough, his mind warned. You've done more than enough. But then the girl coughed. It was small, dry, controlled, as if she'd learned not to draw attention to it. She paused, resting the bags against her knees, catching her breath. For a moment, Marcus saw it clearly. She wasn't just tired. She was exhausted. She resumed walking, slower now, her shoulders sagging under weight no child should carry, physical or otherwise. They finally reached the edge of the neighborhood, where the road narrowed into an alley barely wide enough for a car. At the end stood a building Marcus almost missed, a forgotten structure with cracked concrete steps and windows patched with cardboard and plastic. The girl stopped. Marcus ducked behind a parked van, his heart pounding louder than it should have. He watched as she climbed the steps carefully, setting the bags down once to rest her hands. Her fingers were red and swollen from the cold. She pulled a key from around her neck and unlocked the door. Before stepping inside, she did something that made Marcus's breath catch. She looked down at the food containers and smiled. Not a big smile, not excitement, relief. Then she picked them up and disappeared into the darkness. Marcus waited. 30 seconds passed. Then a minute, against his better judgment. He stepped forward. The hallway inside was dim and smelled of damp concrete and old paint. A single bulb flickered overhead. From somewhere deeper inside the building came the sound of voices, soft, tired, and fragile. Children's voices. Marcus froze. He followed the sound up a narrow staircase, each step creaking beneath his weight. At the top, a door stood slightly open. Warm light spilled out, trembling. He approached slowly. Through the crack, he saw them. 3 younger children sat on the floor around a small folding table. A woman lay on a couch nearby, her face pale, her breathing shallow. An old space heater hummed weakly in the corner, barely fighting the cold. The little girl knelt in the center, opening the food containers with care, dividing portions, making sure everyone got some before taking anything herself. "Eat slow," she whispered gently. "There's enough." The smallest child looked up at her. "Is it from the nice place again?" She nodded. "Yes." "Did you thank him?" "Always." Marcus felt his knees weaken. This wasn't leftovers. This was dinner. This was survival. The girl finally took a bite, only after everyone else had started eating. She chewed carefully, eyes scanning the room, counting, protecting, making sure nothing went wrong. In that moment, Marcus understood something that shattered him. For 3 months, he thought he was helping her, but she had been feeding a family. And the most shocking truth of all wasn't that she needed him. It was that she had been doing this alone, long before he ever noticed. The building looked like it had been forgotten by time. Paint peeled from the walls in long, curling strips. The handrail along the stairwell was loose, wobbling with every touch. Cold air seeped through cracks and windows, carrying the smell of rust, damp concrete, and something faintly medicinal. Marcus stood frozen in the hallway, heart pounding, unsure whether to step forward or turn back. Then the door opened wider, and everything rushed out at once. 5 children spilled into the small room, their faces lighting up the instant they saw the grocery bags. "Did you get food? Is it from the restaurant?" Mom is coughing again. Their voices overlapped, high and urgent, filled with hunger and worry rather than excitement. Small hands reached for the bags, not greedily, but desperately, as if afraid the food might vanish if they didn't touch it fast enough. The little girl, no, the young woman trapped in a child's body, gently held them back. "Slow down," she said softly. "Everyone will get some." Marcus finally stepped into view. The room fell silent. 6 pairs of eyes turned toward him. Suspicion flickered instantly. Learned too early, too fast. One of the boys instinctively stepped in front of the others. The smallest girl pressed herself against the wall. The 11-year-old stiffened, then straightened her shoulders. "I said thank you," she spoke quickly, assuming the worst. "We didn't take anything else. Just what was given." Marcus swallowed hard. "That's not why I'm here," he said quietly. She studied him for a long moment, weighing his words the way adults should, but hadn't for her entire life. Finally, she nodded once and turned back to the bags. Inside the apartment, the truth revealed itself layer by layer. The couch was threadbare, springs visible through torn fabric. A thin woman lay beneath a stack of mismatched blankets, her skin pale, lips dry. Each breath rattled softly in her chest. A half-empty bottle of cough syrup sat on a crate beside her, next to a crumpled prescription Marcus recognized instantly. Expired. "Mom," the girl said gently, kneeling beside her. "I'm home." The woman's eyes fluttered open. "You're late," she whispered. "I know. The bags were heavy today." The woman coughed, deep and painful. Marcus felt his chest tighten. One of the children tugged at the girl's sleeve. "Can we eat now?" She nodded, already moving. She unpacked the containers methodically, dividing portions with the precision of someone who'd learned the hard way that fairness meant survival. Bigger kids got slightly more. The smallest one got extra mashed potatoes. She saved soup for her mother. Only when everyone else was settled did she finally sit down herself. Marcus watched, stunned. This wasn't a child waiting for charity. This was a system, a fragile, carefully balanced routine held together by an 11-year-old's discipline and love. "How long?" Marcus asked, his voice barely audible. The girl looked up. "How long what? How long have you been doing this?" She hesitated. "Since Mom got sick." "And before that?" She shrugged. "I still cooked. Just cheaper food." Marcus did the math in his head and felt dizzy. "You're raising them," he said. She didn't answer immediately. Then, simply, "Someone has to." The smallest boy glanced up at Marcus. "Are you mad?" "No," Marcus said quickly. "No, I'm not mad at all. Sometimes people get mad," the boy continued, "when we're allowed, or when we ask." Marcus looked at the girl again. Her jaw tightened, not defensively, but protectively. "They're good kids," she said firmly. "They don't cause trouble." "I know," Marcus replied. And for the first time, he truly did. The girl finally spoke again, her voice quieter now. "I didn't want anyone to follow me. If you don't want to help anymore, that's okay. We'll figure something out." The words hit Marcus harder than anything else he'd seen. Not fear, not anger. Acceptance. An acceptance learned from disappointment. "I never said I wanted to stop helping," Marcus said. She studied his face carefully, searching for the lies she'd learned to expect. "Then why are you here?" "Because I couldn't ignore it anymore," he thought. "Because I mistook convenience for kindness. Because I thought leftovers could replace responsibility. Because I've been eating alone in luxury, while a child carried the weight of family on her back." Instead, he said, "Because I needed to understand." The woman on the couch stirred again. "Who is that?" she whispered. The girl turned. "Just someone who helped." Marcus stepped forward. "Ma'am, my name is Marcus." The woman's eyes widened slightly when she saw him, his coat, his watch, the way he didn't belong to this room. She tried to sit up and failed. "I'm sorry," she murmured. "We don't have much." Marcus felt something break inside him. "You have everything that matters," he said, gesturing toward the children. "You just shouldn't be carrying it alone." The girl stiffened again. "We're not asking for pity." "I'm not offering pity," Marcus replied. "I'm offering help." Silence filled the room. Then one of the kids asked a question no adult had dared to ask. Does that mean we can have food tomorrow, too? The girl closed her eyes briefly. Marcus knelt, so he was eye level with them all. Yes, he said firmly. Tomorrow, and the day after that, and beyond. The girl stared at him, disbelief cracking her carefully built walls. You don't even know my name, she said. Marcus felt shame wash over him. What is it? Lena. Lena, he repeated. You've been doing something extraordinary, but you shouldn't have to do it alone. Her voice trembled just slightly. People always say that. I know, Marcus replied, but tonight I'm staying. And in that moment, standing in a broken apartment filled with fragile hope, Marcus finally understood the most shocking truth of all. This little girl hadn't been waiting for leftovers. She had been holding a family together. At just 11 years old, she was a protector, the provider, and the parent. And the door that opened that night didn't just reveal the truth. It demanded that Marcus finally answer it. Inside was worse than Marcus had imagined, not because of dirt or chaos, but because of how carefully everything was managed. Blankets were folded neatly along one wall, laid directly on the floor where the children slept side by side for warmth. Shoes were lined up mismatched but clean. A small table stood in the corner, one leg stabilized with a folded piece of cardboard. Every inch of space had been measured, planned, optimized, not by an adult, but by a child who had learned too early that waste meant danger. The sick mother coughed again. It was a deep, tearing sound that seemed to scrape the air itself. The children went quiet instantly, their bodies stiffening in unison. This wasn't new. This was routine. Fear had become muscle memory. I'm okay, the woman whispered weakly, though her breathing said otherwise. Lena was already beside her. She lifted a cup of water with practiced hands, slipping an arm behind her mother's shoulders, raising her just enough so she could drink without choking. Every movement was gentle, efficient, familiar. Marcus stood frozen. He had seen hospital wards calmer than this. The children watched Lena constantly, not like kids watching a sister, but like soldiers watching their commander. Every cue came from her. When she nodded, they moved. When she paused, they waited. She opened the food container slowly, carefully, as if performing a ritual. Steam rose. The smell of real food filled the room. The youngest child whimpered softly. Easy, Lena said. It's hot. She counted silently as she divided the portions. Not evenly, but fairly. The older boys received slightly more protein. The youngest girl got extra vegetables, which Lena quietly slid onto her plate without comment. Soup went first to her mother. Marcus noticed something else. There was no plate for Lena. He waited. The children began eating, slowly at her instruction. No one spoke. No one rushed. Hunger was present, but discipline ruled it. Marcus finally asked, Are you going to eat? Lena didn't look up. I eat at school. The answer came too quickly, too rehearsed. Marcus frowned. But this is dinner. She shrugged lightly. School lunch is enough. It wasn't a lie, but it wasn't the truth either. Marcus glanced at the calendar taped crookedly to the wall. Notes were written on it in careful handwriting. Doctor, maybe. Electric, late again. School trip, not sure. Not dreams. Survival logistics. How long have you been working? Marcus asked gently. Lena hesitated, just a fraction of a second. Before school, I help at the bakery. After school, I clean tables. Sometimes I carry boxes for the shop on 9th Street. They pay cash. Marcus felt something tighten in his throat. And at night, she looked at the food. At night, I come here. One of the boys spoke up proudly. She's fast, faster than the grown-ups. Another added. And she never forgets anything. Lena shot them a look, not angry, but warning. They fell silent. Marcus knelt down again. When do you sleep? She considered the question genuinely, as if it were new. When everyone's asleep, she said. It's quieter then. The mother stirred. Lena, she whispered weakly, you shouldn't. It's okay, Mom, Lena said quickly. I already ate. Marcus looked at the mother's face, lined with guilt, pain, and something worse. helplessness. He had seen it before in hospital rooms and board meetings gone wrong. But never like this. Never carried by someone so young. The mother turned her eyes toward Marcus. She shouldn't have to do this, she said, her voice cracking. She was supposed to go to school plays, birthday parties. She wanted to be a... Lena gently squeezed her hand. Not now. The mother closed her eyes, tears slipping silently into folds of her blanket. Marcus felt anger rise, not at the family, but at the world that allowed this to happen quietly, invisibly, comfortably ignored. Why didn't you ask for help? He asked softly. Lena answered without hesitation. We did. The room went still. At first, she continued, people came. They asked questions, took notes, promised things. Then they stopped coming. Marcus nodded slowly. He knew that pattern. They said Mom needed rest. Lena went on, but rest doesn't pay rent, or buy medicine, or keep the lights on. She finally looked at him directly. So I learned. How to survive? Marcus asked. She shook her head. How to keep us together. That word landed heavy. Together, not better, not happier, not safer, just together. Marcus noticed a school backpack near the door, patched, frayed, but carefully cleaned. A workbook peeked out, covered in handwritten notes. You still do your homework? He asked. Lena nodded. After everyone sleeps. And your dreams? He asked, before he could stop himself. She blinked, surprised. My what? Your dreams, he repeated gently. What do you want to be? For the first time that night, Lena looked unsure. She stared at the wall, thinking. I don't know, she said finally. I don't think about that. Why not? She shrugged again, but this time it was heavier. Dreams don't keep people warm, she said, or fed. The children finished eating. Lena collected the containers, washing them carefully in the small sink. She dried them, stacked them, and set them by the door, ready to be returned. Marcus washed her hands. They were small, chapped, older than they should have been. You know, he said quietly, most adults couldn't do what you're doing. She didn't respond. Not for weeks, he added. Not for months. Still nothing. Certainly not for years. She finally spoke, her voice calm but edged with something sharp. I don't have a choice. Marcus felt that sentence settle deep into him. All his life, he had lived surrounded by options. Even his hardest days came with cushions, money, status, distance. Lena had none of that. Only responsibility. Not for comfort, not for dreams, but for survival, for family, for love heavy enough to replace childhood. Marcus stood slowly, looking around the apartment one more time. This wasn't poverty born of laziness or chaos. This was poverty managed with precision, discipline, and sacrifice by a child who should have been protected, not depended on. Lena, he said quietly. She turned. You've done enough. Her face hardened instantly. No, I haven't. Yes, Marcus said firmly. You have. Silence filled the room again. The children looked between them. The mother watched, afraid to hope. Marcus took a breath. And now, he continued, it's my turn. Lena studied him, searching for familiar signs. False promises, temporary kindness, words without weight. What happens tomorrow? She asked. Marcus met her gaze. Tomorrow, he said, you go to school, and after that you come home. Not to work, not to worry. And dinner? Dinner will be here, Marcus said, every night. And Mom's medicine? I'll take care of it. And rent? I'll take care of it. And if you stop? She asked quietly. Marcus didn't hesitate. I won't. For the first time since he'd met her, Lena's composure cracked. Just a little. Her eyes filled, not with tears, but with exhaustion finally given permission to surface. She looked at her siblings, at her mother, then back at Marcus. Okay, she whispered. But stay. Marcus nodded. I'm not going anywhere. And in that small, fragile apartment, where blankets replaced beds and childhood had been traded for responsibility, something shifted. Not everything, but enough. Because for the first time in a long time, Lena wasn't carrying the weight alone. And Marcus knew this wasn't charity. This was accountability. This was the moment his life, too, would never be the same. Marcus didn't sleep that night, back in his penthouse, surrounded by glass walls, city lights, and a silence that suddenly felt obscene. One truth kept repeating in his mind. Leftovers were never enough. For months, he had congratulated himself for a quiet kindness that cost him nothing. A plate of food, a nod to a waiter, a problem neatly avoided. But what he had witnessed inside that apartment wasn't a story of charity. It was a story of survival, and survival didn't run on scraps. By morning, Marcus had made decisions he'd never once had to feel before, only calculate. He canceled meetings, ignored calls. He wasn't a CEO that day. He was accountable. The first stop was a hospital, not a donation, not a phone call. He went in person. Within hours, Lena's mother was admitted, oxygen placed gently, tests ordered, doctors moving with urgency instead of delay. Marcus stood outside the room, watching Lena pace the hallway, her fingers clenched together as if holding herself upright by sheer will. "She'll be okay," the doctor said carefully. But she waited too long. Lena nodded. She already knew. Next came the apartment. Marcus didn't ask permission. He acted. A temporary furnished home was arranged that same day. Warm beds, clean blankets, a kitchen that worked, groceries stocked not for a night, but for weeks. When Lena walked inside, she stopped. She didn't touch anything. She just stood there, scanning corners, counting exits, still in protector mode. "It's yours," Marcus said gently. "All of it." "For how long?" she asked immediately. "As long as you need." She nodded once, still didn't relax. Then came school arrangements, social workers, paperwork Marcus signed without hesitation, without looking at numbers. A trust set up quietly, not as a headline, not as a favor, as a responsibility. Only after everything was done, after the children were settled, after the mother slept peacefully for the first time in weeks, did Lena finally sit down. She sat on the edge of the bed, shoulders shaking. Marcus noticed something terrifying. She didn't know how to stop. Years of holding everything together had left her without breaks. "I'm scared," she whispered suddenly, staring at the floor. Marcus sat across from her, silent. "I'm scared my mom will die," she continued, her voice breaking for the first time since he'd met her. "I keep thinking if I work harder, if I don't sleep, if I don't mess up, maybe she'll stay." Tears spilled freely now, hot, heavy, overdue. "I don't know how to be a kid," she sobbed. "I don't know what happens if I stop." Marcus felt his chest tighten painfully. This was strength the world never applauded. Strength born from love, fear, and responsibility no child should carry. "You don't have to hold everything anymore," he said quietly. "Not alone." She looked up at him, eyes red, searching for certainty. "You promise?" He nodded. "I promise." Lena leaned forward and cried into her hands. Not dramatically, not loudly, but with the exhausted release of someone who had finally been seen. In that moment, Marcus understood something that no boardroom, no success, no fortune had ever taught him. True strength wasn't power. It wasn't money. It wasn't control. True strength was an 11-year-old girl who carried a family on her back and still whispered thank you for leftovers she never ate. Marcus had followed her thinking he would discover something shocking. He had. But the shock wasn't poverty. It was courage. And from that day on, Marcus Chin never again confused comfort with kindness, because he had finally learned what real responsibility looked like. Sometimes the strongest people are the ones no one sees. Not the ones on billboards, not the ones giving speeches, not the ones celebrated in headlines. Sometimes heroes are quiet, invisible to most, yet carrying the weight of the world on shoulders too small to bear it. This little girl didn't take leftovers for herself. She carried responsibility, sacrifice, and love. Love so fierce it replaced childhood. Every careful division of food, every late-night chore, every moment she put herself last was an act of courage far beyond her years. And the millionaire? He thought he was helping her. But in truth, she changed him. She taught him that kindness is more than convenience, that seeing someone isn't the same as understanding them, and that true strength isn't measured in wealth or power. It's measured in courage, love, and resilience. If this story moved you, if it reminded you that children deserve laughter, play, and safety, not survival, then this is a story you carry with you. Backhand index pointing right, subscribe to this channel, because these stories aren't just meant to be watched, they're meant to be felt. Red heart,